I didn't believe in anything I couldn't verify myself, and that's probably why I agreed to go on that trip. It started with a folded map that didn't belong to any of us. Evan found it in a used book he bought at a thrift store outside Flagstaff. He texted me a picture first. It looked like a normal topographic map at a glance, but something about it felt off even through a phone screen. The lines were too clean, the ink too dark, and there were no labels you'd expect. No highway numbers, no park names, no legend. Just a rough sketch of terrain and one thin red line cutting through it, ending in a small circle. He said it was tucked inside a copy of some old hiking guide, but the trail on the map didn't match anything in the book. That alone should have been enough to ignore it. But Evan wasn't the type to let something go once it got into his head. He called me later that night, already halfway convinced we needed to check it out. I asked him the obvious question. You don't even know where that is. He said he had a general idea. The terrain lines looked like part of northern Arizona, maybe somewhere near the Coconino National Forest, but not exactly. He'd been comparing it with satellite images and couldn't match it perfectly. That made him more interested, not less. Then he said something that stuck with me. He said, if it was nothing, it would match something. That logic didn't make sense, but it sounded convincing enough in the moment. There were 4 of us who ended up going. Me, Evan, Mark, and Tyler. We'd done camping trips before, nothing extreme, mostly weekend stuff. This one was supposed to be 3 days, maybe 4 if we stretched it, just enough to follow the map and see what was at the end of that red line. We left early on a Friday morning. The drive was normal at first. Highways, gas stations, the usual stops. The closer we got to where Evan thought the area was, the more uncertain things became. GPS started cutting out in stretches. Roads on the navigation didn't line up with what we saw. At one point, the app tried to reroute us onto a dirt road that clearly hadn't been used in years. Evan switched to the map. He had it spread out across his lap, constantly comparing it to what we saw through the windshield. He'd give directions based on landmarks instead of road names. A ridge to the left, a dried-out riverbed crossing the path, a cluster of rock formations that matched the shapes drawn on the paper. It worked better than it should have. By midday, we were off any recognizable road. The ground under the tires was uneven and rough, and we had to slow down to avoid damaging the truck. Mark complained about it nonstop, saying this was exactly how people ended up stranded in the middle of nowhere. Tyler didn't say much. He kept looking out the window like he was trying to recognize something, but couldn't. I asked him what was wrong, and he just shrugged, said it felt familiar. That didn't make sense. None of us had been out there before. We kept going anyway. By late afternoon, we reached a point where the truck couldn't go any further. The path narrowed into something more like a dry trail than a road. We parked under a cluster of tall, thin trees that didn't look like they belonged in that area. Their bark was pale, almost gray, and the leaves barely moved even though there was wind. Evan checked the map again and pointed ahead. According to him, we were close to where the red line started. That part bothered me. I hadn't noticed it before, but the map didn't show any route leading to the line. It just started abruptly, like whoever made it assumed you'd already know how to get there. We packed what we needed and started walking. At first, everything felt normal. Dry ground, scattered rocks, the kind of silence you expect in a place far from roads and people. But the longer we walked, the more that silence started to feel different. Not empty, just contained. Like sound didn't travel the way it should. Mark noticed it too. He said it felt like the air was thicker. We followed Evan, who was leading based on the map. He kept adjusting our direction slightly, making sure we stayed aligned with the red line. Every now and then, he'd stop and look around, like he was double-checking something only he could see. After about an hour, we came across the first thing that didn't make sense. It was a wooden post stuck in the ground, about chest height. No markings, no signs attached to it. Just a clean-cut piece of wood planted firmly in place. It didn't look old. The edges were still sharp, and there was no visible weathering. There was nothing else around it. No trail markers, no footprints, nothing to suggest anyone had been there recently. Evan got excited. He said this had to be part of the trail. Mark disagreed immediately. He said it looked like someone just stuck it there for no reason. I didn't say anything. I just touched the wood. It was warm, like it had been sitting in the sun, but the rest of the ground around us wasn't. The air had cooled down as the sun dropped, but that post still held heat. Tyler was the one who pointed out something else. He said, "Look behind it." We all turned. There was another post, maybe 50 feet away, lined up perfectly with the first one. Once we saw that, we noticed a third, then a fourth, stretching further into the distance in a straight line. Evan smiled like he'd just confirmed everything he hoped for. "That's the path," he said. We followed it. The posts were evenly spaced, leading us deeper into the terrain. The ground changed gradually as we moved. Less rock, more packed dirt. The kind that holds footprints clearly. Except there were no footprints. Not ours, not anyone else's. We checked behind us at one point, and our own tracks were there, clear and normal. But ahead of us, between each post, the ground was untouched. That should have been a warning. Instead, we kept going. The sun started to set faster than expected. One minute it was late afternoon. The next it felt like evening. The light shifted in a way that didn't match the time. Mark checked his phone and said it was only around 5. It looked closer to 7. We decided to set up camp near the last visible post before it got too dark. There was a small clearing off to the side, just enough space for our tents. The trees around it were the same pale ones we saw near the truck, tall and still, with leaves that barely reacted to the wind. We built a small fire and sat around it, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled in. Evan kept studying the map. He said the circle at the end of the red line wasn't far from where we were, maybe another hour of walking. Mark said we should wait until morning. No one argued with that. As the light faded completely, the silence got heavier. No insects, no distant animal sounds, nothing. Just the fire and our own breathing. At some point, Tyler spoke up. He said, "Do you guys hear that?" We all stopped and listened. At first, there was nothing. Then, faintly, something that sounded like footsteps. Not close, but not far either. Slow, steady, like someone walking across dry ground. We all looked at each other. Evan said it was probably an animal. Mark shook his head. Animals don't walk like that. The sound continued for a few seconds, then stopped. We waited. Nothing else happened. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was nothing and tried to move on. But no one really relaxed after that. We went to our tents earlier than usual. I shared one with Tyler. Evan and Mark had the other. I remember lying there, staring at the fabric above me, listening. At some point during the night, I woke up. I didn't know what time it was, but the fire outside had died down completely. The darkness felt deeper than it should have been. I could hear Tyler breathing next to me, still asleep. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Closer this time. They circled the campsite slowly, just outside the range of where the fire had been. I held my breath and listened carefully. There was something off about the rhythm. Too even, too deliberate. Not like someone wandering, more like someone pacing. I wanted to wake Tyler, but I didn't move. The footsteps stopped right outside our tent. I could feel it there. Not hear it, not see it, just know. There was a long pause. Then something brushed lightly against the side of the tent. Not a push, not an impact. Just a slow drag, like fingers running along the fabric. I closed my eyes and stayed completely still. After a few seconds, the sound moved away. The footsteps started again, circling once more before fading into the distance. I didn't sleep after that, and when morning came, I told myself it was just my imagination. That was the last normal thought I had on that trip. Morning didn't feel like morning. I noticed that before I even opened my eyes fully. The light coming through the tent fabric was wrong. It wasn't dim, but it wasn't bright either. It had this flat, dull tone to it, like the sun was there, but not fully coming through. Tyler was already awake. He was sitting up, not saying anything. I asked him if he slept. He shook his head and said, "You heard it too, right?" I didn't try to explain it away this time. I just said yes. We stepped out of the tent together. Evan and Mark were already up, standing near what was left of the fire. Neither of them looked rested. Mark had that tense look he gets when he's trying to act like everything is fine, but clearly doesn't believe it. The first thing Evan said was, "Did one of you walk around last night?" No one answered right away. Then Mark said, "Why would we do that?" Evan pointed toward the ground around the campsite. There were footprints. At first, I thought they were ours from the night before, but these were different. They overlapped the edges of where we had been, circling the tents in a wide loop. The spacing was consistent, like whoever made them walked at a steady pace the entire time. Tyler crouched down to look closer. "They're barefoot," he said. That got everyone's attention. The prints were clear enough to see details. Toes, arches, the heel. No shoes, no boots. Just bare feet pressed into the dirt. Mark immediately said it had to be someone messing with us. Evan didn't agree. He said there was no sign of anyone else anywhere else. No extra tracks leading in or out. Just a loop around the campsite. I walked a little further out, scanning the ground. He was right. The footprints didn't lead anywhere. They just appeared, circled us, and stopped. That didn't make sense, but it was there, right in front of us. No one suggested leaving right away, which I think says a lot about how we were all thinking at that point. Instead of seeing it as a reason to get out, we treated it like something we needed to understand first. Evan folded the map open again. He pointed to the circle at the end of the red line and said, "We're close. Whatever this is, it's probably connected to that." Mark pushed back on that immediately. He said this was exactly the kind of thing that should make us turn around. Evan argued that we were already there, that we might as well see it through. Tyler stayed quiet for most of it, but when I asked him what he thought, he said, "I don't like it here, but I feel like we're supposed to keep going." That didn't help. In the end, we packed up and continued along the line of posts. The strange thing was, once we left the campsite, the footprints were gone. The ground ahead of us was clean again, like nothing had ever been there. We followed the posts deeper into the terrain. The land started to change more noticeably after that. The trees thinned out, and the ground became flatter, almost unnaturally even. It looked less like a natural landscape and more like something that had been shaped, but there were no signs of machinery or tools. It took us about 40 minutes before we saw the last post. Beyond it, there was nothing marking a path anymore. Just open land stretching ahead. Evan checked the map again, turning it slightly like he was trying to align it with what we were seeing. He said, "This is it. The circle should be right ahead." We kept walking. At first, I didn't notice anything different. It just looked like more of the same empty terrain. But after a few minutes, something started to feel off again. It was the distance. Things looked farther away than they should have been. We'd pick a point ahead, a rock or a slight rise in the ground, and walk toward it. But it didn't seem to get closer at the normal rate. Mark pointed it out first. "Are we even moving?" he said. We were, obviously. The ground beneath us changed, and when we looked back, we could see where we had come from. But ahead, it felt like we weren't making progress. Evan insisted we were on the right path. He kept checking the map, adjusting our direction slightly, but always moving forward. Then Tyler stopped walking. We all turned to look at him. He was staring straight ahead, not moving. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "There's something there." We followed his gaze. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, slowly, a shape started to form in the distance. It looked like a structure, low to the ground, wide, with straight edges that didn't match the natural landscape around it. We all saw it at the same time. Mark said, "Was that there before?" No one answered, because it hadn't been. We would have noticed something like that, but now it was there, sitting in the middle of an otherwise empty stretch of land. Evan looked at the map again, then back at the structure. "That has to be it," he said. We kept moving toward it. This time, the distance started to close normally. The structure became clearer as we approached. It looked like a building, but not one I could easily identify. The walls were smooth, with no visible seams or joints. The color was hard to pin down. It looked gray at first, then slightly off-white as we got closer, like it reflected light differently depending on the angle. There were no windows, just a single opening on one side. A doorway, maybe. No door attached to it. We stopped a short distance away. No one spoke for a moment. Then Mark said, "This isn't on any map." Evan didn't respond. He was staring at the entrance. Tyler looked more uneasy than I had ever seen him. "I don't think we should go inside," he said. I agreed with him. There was something about that place that didn't feel abandoned. It didn't feel empty. It felt like it was waiting. Evan took a step forward. "We came all this way," he said. "We're at the end of the line." Mark grabbed his arm. "That doesn't mean we walk into whatever that is." They went back and forth for a minute, neither of them backing down. I was about to say we should at least look around the outside first when something else caught my attention. The ground around the structure. There were no footprints. Not ours, not anyone else's, even though we had just walked up to it. The dirt looked untouched, like we hadn't disturbed it at all. I looked back behind us. Our tracks were still there, leading up to a certain point. Then they just stopped, like we had vanished before reaching the building. I pointed it out. That shut everyone up immediately. Evan slowly turned around, looking at the ground, then back at the structure. "This doesn't make sense," he said. Mark said, "None of this makes sense." Tyler stepped back slightly. "I really think we should leave," he said. For a moment, it looked like we might actually agree on that. Then we heard something from inside. A sound, soft but clear enough. Footsteps, the same slow, steady rhythm we heard the night before, coming from inside the structure and moving toward the entrance. No one moved. We just stood there, staring at the dark opening, waiting. The footsteps got closer. Then they stopped, right at the doorway, but nothing came out. We couldn't see anything inside. The darkness beyond the entrance was too deep, like it swallowed the light instead of letting it in. Evan took another step forward. I grabbed his arm this time. "Don't," I said. He hesitated. Then, before any of us could say anything else, Tyler spoke again. But this time, his voice sounded different, quieter, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. "It's already seen us," he said. That was the moment everything shifted, because right after he said that, we heard the footsteps again, behind us. No one turned around right away. That sound behind us felt closer than anything we had heard before. It wasn't distant like the night before, and it wasn't contained inside the structure like a moment ago. It was right there, just a few steps behind us, moving at the same slow, steady pace. I could feel it more than hear it. Mark was the first to react. He turned quickly, almost too fast, like he was trying to catch something off guard. There was nothing there, just the open ground we had walked across. But the sound didn't stop. It kept moving, circling again, the same way it had around our tents. The rhythm stayed perfectly consistent, like whoever or whatever was making it didn't need to adjust for terrain or direction. Evan stepped back toward us, away from the structure. Okay, he said, his voice tight. We leave. Right now. No one argued this time. We started moving back the way we came, keeping close together without saying anything else. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something following us, but there was nothing visible. Still, the footsteps stayed with us. Not chasing, not rushing, just there. After about a minute of walking, I realized something else was wrong. The structure was still in front of us. I stopped. That's not right, I said. Everyone else stopped too. We had turned around. I was sure of it. I remembered shifting my body, changing direction, retracing the path we came from. But when I looked ahead, the building was still there, sitting at the same distance it had been before. Evan shook his head like he was trying to clear it. No, he said. We turned. We definitely turned. Mark pointed behind us. The structure was there too. Same distance. Same angle. Like it had duplicated itself. Tyler let out a quiet breath. We're not moving right, he said. That was when the panic started to creep in. Not loud, not out of control, but enough to make everything feel tighter. The air, our movements, the way we were thinking. Evan unfolded the map again with shaking hands. He kept turning it, trying to align it with what we were seeing, but it didn't match anymore. The red line was still there. The circle was still there, but the terrain around it looked different than what was in front of us. Mark said, "This thing isn't real. We need to pick a direction and just go." That sounded simple, but nothing felt simple at that point. Still, we had to do something. We picked a direction at random, away from both structures, and started walking without looking back. At first, it seemed like it was working. The ground changed slightly under our feet. The air felt less heavy. The silence started to sound more like normal silence again. Then Tyler said, "Stop." We stopped. He pointed down. There were footprints in the dirt ahead of us. Barefoot. Same size. Same shape as the ones around our campsite. But these weren't circling. They were leading forward, in the exact direction we were heading. Evan said, "We're not following that." Mark agreed immediately. We changed direction again, this time going perpendicular to the tracks. For a few minutes, there was nothing. Then the footprints appeared again. Same pattern, same direction. No matter which way we turned, they showed up ahead of us, always leading somewhere. Always just far enough ahead that we never saw them being made. That's when Evan did something I didn't expect. He started running. Not away from anything specific, just straight ahead, ignoring the rest of us. "Evan," I shouted, but he didn't stop. Mark cursed and took off after him. I looked at Tyler for a second, then followed. We ran across that flat, empty ground for what felt like longer than it should have taken to reach anything. And then, suddenly, Evan stopped. Mark nearly ran into him. I slowed down behind him, tried to catch my breath. We were back at the structure. Only now it looked closer than before. Too close, like it had been waiting for us to return. Evan was breathing hard, staring at the entrance. "I didn't turn," he said. "I went straight." No one responded, because it didn't matter. We were back. The opening looked darker than before, not just shadowed, but dense, like it had depth beyond what it should. And then the footsteps started again, this time from inside. Fast, not running, but quicker than before. More urgent, coming toward the entrance. Mark backed up immediately. "We're done," he said. "We're getting out of here. I don't care how." But before we could move, something changed. The sound stopped right at the doorway again. And then, for the first time, we saw something. Not clearly, not fully, just enough to know it was there. A shape moved in the darkness. It didn't step out, but it shifted closer to the edge of the opening. I could make out part of it. A shoulder, an arm, the outline of a head, but the proportions were wrong. Too long, too narrow, like it had been stretched slightly out of shape. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Tyler did something that still doesn't make sense to me. He stepped forward. "Tyler, don't," I said, but he didn't stop. He walked slowly toward the entrance, like he was being pulled. Mark grabbed him, but Tyler pulled away. "It's not trying to hurt us," he said quietly. I didn't believe that for a second. The thing inside shifted again. It didn't come out. It didn't need to, because the moment Tyler got close enough, the ground under him changed. Not visibly at first, but his foot went down slightly deeper than it should have, like the surface had softened. He froze. Then he tried to pull his foot back. It didn't come up. "Hey," he said, and now there was panic in his voice. "Something's wrong." Mark grabbed his arm and pulled. For a second, it looked like it might work. Then Tyler dropped, not falling forward or backward, just straight down, like the ground had opened under him. But there was no hole, no collapse. He sank into the surface like it wasn't solid anymore. I grabbed his other arm. We both pulled as hard as we could. His upper body stayed above the ground, but everything below his waist was gone. He was screaming now. The ground around him looked normal, but it wasn't holding him. It was taking him. "Pull him out," Mark yelled. We tried. We really tried. But it felt like something on the other side was pulling him down harder than we could pull him up. Tyler looked at me. "I can't feel my legs," he said. Then his body dropped another few inches. I could feel my grip slipping. The surface around his torso started to give way too, slowly swallowing more of him. "Don't let go," he said. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. His arm slid out of my hand. Mark lost his grip a second later, and just like that, Tyler was gone. No hole, no trace. The ground was solid again, like nothing had happened. We stood there, both of us breathing hard, staring at the spot where he had been. Evan hadn't moved. He was still facing the structure. The shape inside was gone. The opening was empty again. Mark grabbed my shoulder. "We leave. Now." This time, we didn't hesitate. We didn't try to figure anything out. We ran, not in a specific direction, just away. We didn't look for the posts. We didn't check the map. We just moved. And somehow this time it worked. The terrain started to change back. The ground became uneven again. The trees reappeared. The silence broke slightly with distant sounds that felt normal. After what felt like hours, we found a line of wooden posts again. We followed them without stopping. Eventually, we reached the truck. It was exactly where we left it. Nothing disturbed. No signs that anything had happened. We drove out of there as fast as we could. The moment we hit a real road again, everything felt normal. Too normal. Like the last 2 days hadn't happened at all. We reported Tyler missing when we got back. Search teams went out. They couldn't find the place. Not the posts. Not the structure. Not even the area we described. They said the coordinates didn't match any terrain like that. At one point, one of the search coordinators suggested we might have been in a different location entirely, maybe misremembering details under stress. But I know what we saw. Evan still has the map. Or at least he did. A few weeks after the trip, he called me late at night. He sounded different. Unsteady. He said the map had changed. I told him that didn't make sense. He said the red line was gone. There was only a circle now. And it wasn't in the same place as before. I haven't seen the map since. Evan stopped answering calls not long after that. Mark refuses to talk about any of it. As for me, I try to move on. I told myself it was some kind of disorientation, stress, maybe something environmental that affected how we perceive things. But there's one thing I can't explain. A few months after the trip, I woke up in the middle of the night. For no reason. No sound, no movement. Just awake. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Circling my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. There's no way anyone could walk around like that outside my window. but the sound was there, moving at the same pace I remember, stopping sometimes, then continuing. I didn't look. I didn't move. I just lay there and listened until it stopped. It doesn't happen every night, but it happens often enough that I don't sleep well anymore. And sometimes, when it gets quiet enough, I feel the same thing I felt outside that tent, like something is just out of sight,